G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing a business partner, a good friend of mine, Anne Gigney from the Distillers Institute. She's based here in Hobart with me in Australia. Thanks for your time today, Anne.
Thanks, Troy.
Let's start with how we know each other. I normally answer this, but I'll let you answer this one.
So I think it was late 2013. I was doing some work for the Tasmanian government and looking for some clever dude to talk about marketing, and we bumped into each other at I think it was an event down at Lark Distillery. That was just as you were starting or just before you started as CEO. So we got to know each other way back then.
That was 8.5 years ago.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, geez. We'll tell our audience a bit about our business, what it does and how it makes money.
So the Distillers Institute is Australia's only online distilling business course, and it came out of a need really that I recognised back in about 2015. There were lots of people that wanted to get into the Australian or New Zealand distilling industries, and there wasn't much in the way of courses or learning. So got to talk to some people, realised there was an opportunity there, and created an initial business. So that's since become the Distillers Institute. There's 4 founders, so you and me, and our 2 business partners, Ian Thorne, who's a technical guru, and Brett Steele, who's kind of our marketing guide. And I guess the role of the Distillers Institute is to connect people that want to get into the industry with the knowledge and the know-how, and then to support them to successfully do that.
Yeah, when we looked at it, we felt there was a big gap in the market for the business side of helping people considering starting a distillery. As you well know, because you sit on the board of the IBD for Asia Pacific, but we always point our students, if they want technical training on how to make good spirit, to the Institute of Brewers and Distillers, which is based out of Edinburgh in Scotland.
Indeed. And I think the other thing, Troy, we've discovered in this journey is that it is a really great model, which I guess we'll get to talk about in a minute. We've got 2 key courses in there now, which is the planning your successful distillery business and the launching, which really is a more advanced course for people that want to grow and export. I guess we'll talk about price points and things in a minute.
Yeah, the first one we launched, Course 1 Planning, the 7 modules, and we're very committed to, we want to deter more people getting in than actually do, because a lot of people, and this is not just for distilling businesses, but small businesses, a lot of people don't understand how hard it is, and particularly in distilling, it's very capital intensive. So you have to raise a lot of money. So giving them all the information, help them, guide them through putting together that business plan, market research, marketing plan, and very importantly, obviously, the financial model. We're happy that people get to the end of that and say, actually, no, this is not something for me. And those that do, Course 2 is to help them launch. They've decided they're going to open a distillery. They've put their paperwork in with the tax office so they can order a still, and then Course 2 gives them a giant Gantt chart or project plan, even more complex financial model, a lot more tools, templates, particularly for production, which Ian's knocked up, and off they go. Tell us how you started out.
Look, it's a good question. I mean, if you think about it, for me, the starting out really commenced when I was legal, when I turned 18, and I used to have some, drinks with my dad, which was always Johnny Walker, which we sat by the fire and had. So for me, that's now a really good memory for me, but it's also something I think that inspired my interest in spirits. I think what you're really asking is kind of how did I actually end up getting into the industry here? And when I moved back to Tasmania after doing what we all do and travelled around the world and Australia, I wanted to be involved in something that was growing and emerging. And I think back in 2011, that's when I came back here, we were really just starting to see the emergence of distilling. That's probably before it hit its straps. And then in 2014, I think, when Sullivan's Cove won its first award, all of a sudden things just started to kind of explode. And I was lucky enough. Sorry, Troy.
Sorry, yeah, they were the first. That made Australia only the third country in the world to win the best single malt at the best awards in the world, the World Whisky Awards, and that's obviously after Scotland and Japan. So it really put Australian whisky, particularly Tasmanian whisky, on the map, because Sullivan's Cove sold out within hours, and then everyone went searching for what are some other great Tasmanian whisky distilleries, and obviously that helped all of us.
And what a great time then, really, for us to be thinking about getting into the industry. It's pretty fortuitous, really. I remember talking to Dean Jackson, who was then the distiller up at Redlands Estate Distillery, which is now no longer around. And it just became really clear that there was this intense interest in distilling in Australia that just continued to grow after that, but there wasn't really any way of accessing that. So I guess it was fortunate timing and a little bit of sort of passion and enthusiasm. So I'm forever grateful to Dean and then to Bill Lark and Patrick Maguire for kind of encouraging that I guess that desire to create something in the education space for distilling.
Yeah, great. So maybe do you want to talk, what year did you start the Whisky Academy?
So I started researching that in 2015 and commenced that in 2016.
Yep. Maybe tell the audience a bit about what that business did and how that morphed or transitioned into the Distillers Institute now.
Yeah, it was I guess a bit of an ambitious jump. 2015, it was still an emerging industry. I think it's fair to say. It did become really clear, though, that there were people that wanted to get into distilling, didn't kind of really know where to start. And Bill Lark was incredibly generous with his time for people that wanted to get into the industry, and still is.
As he is, yeah.
But I guess he's one man, and there was certainly a lot of interest for more people to get into the industry. So what I did with the Tasmanian Whisky Academy was create a 1 day or 1 and a bit day course. That was an overview face-to-face course. What are the things you need to think about from a business point of view? What are the things you need to think about from a distilling and technical point of view? And then to be able to connect people with the industry so they can then go on their journey to answer those questions themselves. So I did that for 3 years, had about 250 people, I think, through that course, which is pretty incredible. Not everyone's gone on to open their own distillery, and as you said, that's not a bad thing. It's a good decision point really to make, isn't it, to understand that it's either right for you or it's not.
Yep.
And then 2018, I guess, you and I I had asked you if you would be part of my volunteer board, if you like, or advisory board. And we had a couple of other people that we had join us on that journey. And I think with conversations between ourselves, it became quite clear the online space was an opportunity that we really needed to think about exploring. And so did a pilot in 2018 for a short course. That proved to be really, really good. And then you and I guess, started having more significant conversations about whether we could create something which has since become the Distillers Institute in the online space.
Yeah, I think it was 2018 we were catching up, and I just started studying a lot of online education businesses because I was thinking of moving into the space one day. And when you were saying the challenges you had with the logistics and moving people around, getting them down from the mainland, organising meals, accommodations, etc., things like that. It was not as much fun. And I think that's when I suggested, well, why don't you do a test with an online course? And obviously that test went really well, and we kept talking and put the band together.
Put the band together, indeed. You and I were the original founders, and
yep.
I'll talk about that in a minute. I think that was a big change for me personally, to be thinking about bringing in partners into the business. I'm happy to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. And so in 2015, when you started the Whisky Academy, how old were you? That was 7 years ago.
Oh, early 40s. That
Yep.
must have made me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the Distillers Institute?
Oh, key numbers. You've put me on the hop here.
Well, I obviously know them all.
You do. So look, we launched in April 2020. Anybody who has been present in the world in the last 3 years knows that was right at the height of COVID. Could have been bad timing, but I guess for us that worked out to be awesome timing. Lots of people were at home. Lots of people were thinking about their careers and their jobs, and I guess what they didn't want to be doing and what they did want to be doing. So we launched the planning course and the Distillers Institute. Then course was $9.95, I think, was our original price point.
Yep.
In the first month, we generated 32,000 in sales, and by the end of the financial year, so that was only a couple of months, about 50,000, I think it was. Our 35 initial students quickly grew to more than 60, and we've continued to grow steadily, I guess, in part due to the quality of the product, but also a little bit of clever marketing and some special activities, including webinars and the launch of our second course. We did also have existing lists of people that we thought might be interested. So we brought, all four of us bought those. And I think that did make a difference for us. And now we've been operating, sorry, Troy.
Sorry, the bulk of those came from the Whisky Academy.
And a lot of those, it was logical then, wasn't it, for many of those people that might have been interested who'd already been on some part of that journey with me. We've been operating now just over 2 years. That was in April this year. We've got about 400 students, and just over 30 of those have opened their doors or got product in the market. So it's been pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it's exceeded all our expectations. And yeah, it's great to hear the feedback from all the students and the unprompted testimonials. And also the big part, I think, is the very active private Facebook group we have as well. A lot of people chime in there and help each other out, not only the four of us, but a lot of our students as well. Very supportive of each other.
I think you at some point said to me, how do you know when you've succeeded in this kind?
Yeah, that's the next question.
Oh, I'm jumping the gun. I'm jumping the gun on that one. I think that's a really interesting and complex question, because in some cases, I think success can look like how good does it make you feel? And I mean, you're talking about the guys that give us calls and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, we've just got our license to distill, or we've just opened our doors. I think personally, that's a wonderful part of the success. You know, folks opening their doors, people selling spirit, calling us to thank us for our contribution. That's brilliant. You know, if we were thinking about the business and whether we've succeeded, I think the answer is yes there as well. And that's not just about the numbers that the business is generating, but I think as a model, we created something that was really needed in the industry, and we've been able to deliver that in a really valuable way. I think so. For me, that's where the two parts of that success come in.
Yep. And I think the other thing on some key numbers that can help illustrate the impact we've had is the time frame it takes for our students to get their license from the tax office to be able to order a still, let alone install one. You know, traditionally, people that don't go through our course, it can take 4 to 6 months, because they go back and forth with the tax office because they haven't filled out the paperwork correctly. They don't know actually what the tax officers asking of them. So that was definitely something we focused on in the course. And I was floored when the first few students started coming back and we'd ask, they've got their license, and we'd say, oh, how long did that take? And it was in some cases weeks, and in others even days, coming back turned around approved. So that was a very good indicator of the success of the course and the students.
That's been incredible, actually. It's a really good point.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I honestly think, Troy, it's those calls from those first few students. I mean, I remember getting that first call from Dylan and Rachel at the Primary Goods Co. distillery up there in Parramatta, when they called us and said, thank you. It's like, you know what? This is kind of cool. This kind of works. I think, that was a personally really exciting measure of success for me.
Next question's perfect for you, because you and Brett head up marketing for us. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
I think well in advance, and get good help. I think even though, so both Brett and I have a marketing background, and I know you've got a marketing passion. We did a really good job, I think, when we started and we were driving the marketing. But 3 months in, it became really, really clear that we actually needed to get some help to be thinking about not just marketing, but about how we're reaching a potential audience, and then how we're able to service them. So thinking well in advance and getting good help, I think, is really important.
And we use the Net Promoter Score. Do you know what our number is at the moment?
The magical number is, I think the last 2 surveys came in at 60, Troy, but I might need you to unpack that a bit for our audience.
Yeah, positive 60. So in the June and December quarter, we're about to run that again. Oh, sorry, every 6 months we run that. So Net Promoter Score, positive 60 is extremely difficult to achieve, let alone maintain. So that is a really good indicator. And for the audience, I've written a blog post on NPS. So if you search our blog for N for Nelly PS, that'll explain how that number is calculated. It's not a percentage, but to get positive 20 is hard, and anything above positive 50 is extremely difficult. So yeah, that's another great indicator of how things have gone. How do we fund the business?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? So when I first started out, so this was before Distillers Institute, I was lucky enough to get a grant from the Tasmanian government that was focused on delivering a workforce development plan, so really understanding what the workforce and the training needs were of the distilling industry. The important part of that, I guess, for the Distillers Institute story is that allowed me to offset a part-time job doing something else, while also kind of building this picture about what training could become. In regards to the Distillers Institute, that original investment really was about the time of all of us 4 founders. And I think you probably remember the numbers better than me, Troy, but I think I bought some IP to the original setup of the Distillers Institute, and the 3 founders put in a component each, the numbers of which I can't remember.
I think between the 3 of us, you brought the IP along, we brought some cash along, but I think it was less than 10 grand in the end.
I think you're right. And what's been really amazing, I think, about this business is that it's not been a costly business to set up. It's taken a lot of time. So certainly that first year, really, we spent a lot of time, building a course and then making sure it was amazing and well tested and well regarded and all of that sort of stuff. But the actual overheads of the business are really quite low. I think we spend about 5K on marketing every month and a little bit on technology-based overheads, but it's not an expensive business to run.
No, that's the great thing. Digital education or digital products, online education, it really is your time setting up the course, writing the content, and then most of our time really now just goes to marketing. We jump back into the course every 6 months and add a bit here and there, or time spent on developing new products like course 2, for example, and we're currently working on launching a New Zealand version of the 2 courses, and we're also about to set up and launch the Brewers Institute as well, which I think will be even bigger than the Distillers Institute for brewers in Australia initially.
That will be exciting.
I
kind of can't wait actually to see how that's going to unfold.
And for the context, I guess, for the audience, pricing wise, and you mentioned we opened at $9.95, and we have an anti-Black Friday sale. So every Black Friday, our prices go up $100. We're about $1,300 now for course 1, the planning course, and course 2 is $4,500. So we've been able to cash flow the growth of the business from profits. Basically, that's how we've funded it. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a dynamic industry to be in and a wonderful community to be part of. I think the altruistic part of me loves connecting with the people that want to be in the industry, and providing good advice about, the setup and the community and all of that. So you might do it differently. You might go bigger and harder sooner. I don't know, but the industry itself.
I would have chosen the right fucking platform right out the gate. We had to switch education platforms halfway through because I didn't do enough research. Yeah.
You're going to ask me what's the most stressful thing, and that's not it for me because you did all of that. Thank you.
That's the next question. What can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
So it wasn't swapping platforms. So we did actually swap the platforms. Was about 6 months in, because the platform that we had to host really wasn't doing everything that we wanted it to do.
I think it was a bit over a year. It was July last year, I think we switched. So we had probably 200 students to move over, and I was not looking forward to it, but we didn't get one single email or complaint, which I'm pretty pleased about.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, that wasn't stressful for me because Troy looked after all of that. I think my own personal one really was making the leap into a partnership. So for me, my family had all run their own businesses. I ran my own PR business in my 20s. And so, kind of had done everything myself to create the Whisky Academy, of course, with the support of my volunteer board. The idea of actually bringing people into the business was really quite daunting. And I don't know how many conversations I had, Troy, with you about this. It wasn't a quick decision for me because it was scary. I honestly think that's probably been my biggest personal challenge. It's not really been stressful. I don't find these sort of things stressful. I think maybe the other thing, if you're going to talk about anything providing a level of stress, it's maybe the time commitment when we've all got other businesses, we've got small children, we've got older parents, we've got other projects, and then finding a balance to be able to sustain and grow a business while doing all those other things is actually it can be quite stressful. So finding how to make that work is probably the difficult thing.
Yeah. And for the audience, so right from the start, we discussed and agreed we think we could get away with about 16 hours a week working on this business. That's across the 4 of us. It's not each. So, but it is hard to, when you've got other things going on, to make everything fit. So yeah, totally. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think personally for me, it's been the business systems. It's not that I didn't have good business systems, but they certainly weren't at the compliance and process level that you operate at, Troy. And I think even though that kind of went against the grain for me initially, that's been probably the most valuable change to how I operate. I think one of the things that perhaps we had to work on the most to add the value was really about the content and the quality of the courses, and then the user journey surrounding that. So that is a nuts and bolts thing, but we needed to create really good quality courses that help people get into distilling, had relevant information that allowed people to connect with industry, was practical and useful, And then we had to spend lots of time and energy and quality checking to get to the point where that was really, really awesome, and we were behind it, and we realized its value. So that's those two things probably have been the greatest for me in that space.
It was a huge task, wasn't it? And difficult to have 4 people writing a course together pretty much at the same time. You laid out the structure, which helped us all greatly, but it was still challenging. And then you coming back and doing that editing to try and get the voice similar, because we all write differently. Obviously, that was a huge piece of work.
It was good though, wasn't it? In the end, yes.
And then we did it all again with course 2. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I think for me, it's been about feeling like I want to do more, want to add more, want to spend more time, want to contribute more, want to, never stop wanting to make it better.
Yep.
So I love the pace and the demand of that, but I think I find myself thinking about this business all the time, I guess, like any business owner does. It's not that I don't enjoy that, but I think it can take a toll.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
I think the thrill of the growth, and I'd like to say, there is there's certainly a personal thing, being able to help people realize their dreams. Hearing their dreams and then actually seeing them put them into action is really cool. But I think actually just watching the business grow is really exciting.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey? And you can go all the way back to the PR company that you started.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, certainly having partners is definitely one. You have to, in a partnership, you have to give something away in order to gain something greater. And that is, I think, quite a significant mindset. If I go back to my 20s and think about the first business I created, I probably would have approached it more like a business than I did at the time. So that's been the biggest success, I think, for the Distillers Institute, is being really clear that it's a business and we need good processes to make it work and function how it needs to work. That's not what happened when I ran my PR business in my 20s.
Very common though.
Yeah, so that's definitely something I would change.
Yeah. The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I reckon there's 2 of those for me. Discipline. So back to those, the discipline around thinking, time commitment and processes. And on the flip side of that, if you find you're thinking about it all the time, then making sure you give yourself time to balance that commitment as well. So for me, that's spending time with my family or heading out for a walk in the bush. I think that's really quite important for small business owners, particularly in the distilling industry. We know how busy people that get into this industry will be. You've got to find time for yourself as well.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success, then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening? Normally we have business owners on that have at least 5 team members, but I think we've both got an interesting take on this question.
Well, I think that's a journey we took together, Troy, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was over managing people and I said, if we're going to do this, let's work on the business for our 16 hours across the week for the 4 of us, and outsource, use contractors, leverage my offshore team, whatever, for the lower value stuff. I wasn't really keen on having to manage people again.
I think, I guess from a personal point of view, the journey we took was that Troy and I were kind of in the Distillers Institute journey together. We then needed to find people that we thought would be a good fit to join us on that journey, not only from a personality point of view and industry relevance point of view, but also how did it fill the gaps for the bits that we didn't have? So you'd suggested we bring in Brett, and Brett and I had been, I guess, to a certain degree, not competitors directly, but in similar fields.
He had Drink Tasmania Premium Tours, so taking tourists around to distilleries and breweries. Yeah.
So I had to. Well, I think that's the other thing about adding people to the team. What do you need to think about, or what's the advice for others? And I think for me, going on that journey of bringing in Brett and Ian, it was actually now about not making the business personal. So actually recognizing that your business is a business. And if you've grown it to be like your own child, then it's really hard to give it away.
Yeah.
So I think, if you can, pulling your emotional attachment away from the business is actually a really good way of changing your mindset about bringing people into that, into your new entity, into your new business.
Yeah, I think the four of us complement each other really well with our skills and experience. Ian's the last piece we added in there. Obviously, he was at Starwood in Melbourne for 7 years, who's recently just won a shit ton of awards, 12 awards at San Francisco Spirits Awards, one of the best in the world, and named Distiller of the Year in the world. And he was there pretty much from when they started. So he's very technical. He's got a master's in brewing and a master's in distilling. He's a bit of a nerd, isn't he? He's probably going to listen to this.
He's an awesome kind of dude.
He is. Yeah, very smart guy. And he's the chief trainer, isn't he, for the IBD in Asia Pacific?
Yeah, so actually Ian and I knew each other through that. So I deliver also the training for the Institute of Brewing and Distilling here in Australia and New Zealand. And Ian has for the last few years been the technical trainer here in the region. So we already knew that he had, incredible pedigree from a technical point of view. So he was certainly my first choice for that.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think you got to cheer for each other and drink whiskey together or something.
I was going to say, and don't just say drink a lot of whiskey.
But it's true. My dad had his own multiple businesses right from when he was a young man. And one of the things that he always used to do, which maybe these days you probably wouldn't be allowed to do, but he used to bring in on a Friday afternoon, make them clean up the workshop where they worked. And then at the end of it, he'd bring them in a slab or half a slab of beer. And they'd all sit around and they'd tell stories and have their beer and then they'd head off home. Maybe it wasn't a slab. Maybe it was, anyway, a beer.
Yep.
So I think actually, recognising people's achievements, no matter what they are, for the thing that they're doing is actually really, really important, because everyone likes to be told that they're doing a good job. Even if they've not, changed the world that week, cheering for each other is really important.
Yep, definitely. And we hang out. Ian comes down once a year, and you and Brett came over to my final dinner party here at the house on Saturday, which was great. 47 people. I'm still cleaning my house up. Today's Friday. But yeah, it's always great to hang out with you both, and when Ian's in town.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's happened that's really cool, we've now started to get some of our students who have opened their doors visiting us here in Tassie and catching up and having drinks. And when we head to the Big Island from Little Tassie, we can catch up with them as well. So we're starting to see not just catching up with ourselves and cheering, but actually then catching up with our students and cheering as well, which has been really good.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I think for me, that's about making sure I allocate in my schedule a time for me. And then in Tassie, there's so many amazing, beautiful places to go. So putting on your boots and heading out in the rain up the bush or something, it's my reset.
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, over the years, I've added qualifications to the list. I started a business advanced diploma course. and did that. But I think for me, professional development might look a little bit different for me personally. I like to understand what's happening, particularly in marketing and digital and social media. And so I find myself spending any spare time I've got filling my gaps by reading books, looking at software, downloading stuff and tinkering. Don't listen to as many podcasts as perhaps I should, Troy.
Have you listened to episode 200 yet with Mark Ritson?
I have not.
That is a cracker. It's only about 30 minutes, I think.
Oh God, I better do that. I feel ashamed that I haven't done that now.
Yeah, professor of marketing for 25 years, top bloke, British, pivoted to online courses 5-6 years ago, and is doing between $10 and $20 million a year in sales. So definitely a role model for us and a dangerous man to have a beer with, because a couple of days after I recorded that with him, I went out to our local, because you live just around the corner from me. I could probably hit a 3-wood to your house and a 1-wood to Brett's house the other way. So a beer with Mark. It's a great episode on marketing, on the 2 courses they sell, mini MBA in brand management and mini MBA in marketing. So I'd highly recommend getting that. It's a bit of a swear off because Mark likes to swear as much as I do.
I think that question around professional development is a really interesting one, Troy, because there are the formal ways of learning. All of the ones that we talk about, books and podcasts and courses and training and conferences and events. I also think, if you're a lifelong learner, if you're the sort of person who likes to fill your head with new things, you kind of never stop that professional development. It might look different. But I would say easily for me, I'd be spending 2 or 3 hours a week because of the work I do, just kind of understanding and looking at new opportunities, particularly around digital and social and marketing. So for me, that's just kind of something that sinks into my head.
Yeah, reminds me of one of my favorite quotes: "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." Benjamin Franklin.
Nice.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Oh, well, for a while there, I would say you were certainly one of mine. When we set up the original advisory board for the Whisky Academy, I made sure that I went through the process of identifying people that I had very high regard for, and they were, they were experts in their field. So my friend Ian was an expert in education and training and had done a lot around the world. So certainly from that point of view, having him on board was really important. And yourself, obviously, right across the board there with business and marketing at the time, Troy. And Amanda, who was also a member of that board, extremely good background in marketing. And then David, who was another person who was on that advisory board, was really, really connected in Tassie. And so he was really good at explaining and helping us navigate what it looked like to build networks. So I think if anybody's setting up a business, it's really important to have people that can guide your thinking, maybe more so than your activity, but guide your thinking so that you're kind of not just in the space that you're in, and make sure you get good people around you that complement you, but who have different skills to help you on that journey.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
In our current setup, we have our 4 founders. So we are founders and directors. It's a good question. Is there anybody else in our Distillers Institute business we refer to? We've had a couple of consultants who've come in and helped us get our thinking right around strategic planning and stuff like that. But I think we would definitely learn from each other. So one of the great things about our 4 founders, we've all got different strengths, and would say that we would definitely be learning from each other as well.
We meet every 2 weeks, pretty informally. Just ironically, we're all on Zoom, even though the 3 of us are in Hobart and Ian's in Melbourne. At least one of us is driving a car. But we meet for about 30 minutes every fortnight, which is great. And then once or twice a year. 4 of us will get together. Ian will fly down, or we might be in Melbourne. All right, Anne, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Gosh, that's a hard one. Troy, because I just generally, I don't think about what's hard. So it's quite a difficult question for me. Maybe knowing the right time to grow. So if you've got a business that's like ours and we were thinking about scaling, what would that look like? When would we scale? And how would we manage that growth? I think perhaps for us, that would be the hardest thing is the scaling, understanding when to scale.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Business books. Don't read business books. And I know that will shock. No, it doesn't shock you, does it?
What about anything on marketing?
So generally my books are consumed as news articles. So I will seek out information about the thing that I'm wondering about. Rarely it is a book because I much prefer to read news articles or to watch YouTube videos about people talking about their thing, whatever it is, the thing that I'm interested in. So while I have read some business books, From Good to Great is one of those. And, I've got all my marketing textbooks and my business textbooks. Generally, I refer more to online sources of information than books.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development? So you just mentioned YouTube's a big source for you.
Yeah, and also I use Linda in one of the other areas of work that I do. So LinkedIn Learning is one of them, and Linda, which accesses and categorizes a lot of stuff in the LinkedIn Learning, is a tool that I use in some of my other work. So the great thing about the other work that I do, which is in comms and marketing, it's very complementary to this kind of work as well. So even though one's distilling and one's marketing, a lot of the things that I'm learning about are applicable to both. So yeah, I do a lot of that sort of online learning. And
Linda, that's lynda.com, isn't it?
That's right.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Helpers. I know that's not what you mean in tools, but to be honest, I think if I hadn't had yourself and then the other 2 fellas on the journey, then I actually wouldn't have scaled, so I wouldn't have grown.
Yep.
So for me, getting the right people is probably the right tool.
Finally, my favourite question: what would you tell yourself on day 1 of starting out?
Do it sooner.
No one's ever said that yet.
And I think because as a sole operator, and I would suspect a lot of people out there who are sole operators fall into this category as well. You just do your stuff, and you're good at doing your stuff. And you think, one day I might scale. Well, the one day never comes unless you actually do something about it. So I think if I'd been smarter about how I could have done it right from the outset, Troy, I would have come to you in 2015 and said, let's do this business. You might have said no, but I would have done it sooner.
Yep, great. Well, thanks very much for your time today, Anne. One of my currently 29 business partners over my 22-year business journey in 14 businesses, I think. So it's been great working with you. I'm looking forward to the next chapter over the next few years, particularly launching the Distillers Institute in other countries and eventually the Brewers Institute.
Exciting times ahead, my friend.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.